One of my mentors showed me this paper about a speech this guy named Willie Lynch gave. He walked around the Americas and talked about the perfect way on how to condition the perfect slave to the point where all you have to do is push and pull and the person will become as docile as a horse. Right? The first thing that I learned about this, through this speech was the controlling of our language. In this speech, Willie Lynch says, delete the language, delete the dance, delete the history, delete the music, right? Because with all that goes our essence, our spirit, where we really came from. Here at UCSC, I learned that as a Latino, we're three races in one, sometimes four. It's African, Indigenous, European, and at times Asian, depending on the time period, right? But Willie Lynch taught that those differences should be accentuated, that those differences should be overemphasized and overenforced, right? So literally there were slaves parents who were, imagine an African mom or dad and an indigenous mom or dad, and they both get raped. It's just more obvious with the mom, right? And they literally had a light son, a dark daughter, a red son, a caramel daughter, right? In my family, my brother is darker than me and my sister's lighter than me. That's not by accident, right? We're all mixed races and stuff. So then the slave owners would come in and they'd literally physically divide the families by shade. You're this shade of dark, you're too dark, you're gonna pick my cotton. You're this shade of brown, you're gonna work my mills. You're light enough, but you can tell you're tainted. Clean my shit and raise my kids when I'm tired of them. When they came out light and white enough, this is my son and daughter. Everyone, she came out white, just like her daddy, right? So while the slaves, our ancestors, were separated, Willie Lynch used the three main tools to keep us and them separated, which is fear, envy, and distrust. The three main tools are fear, envy, distrust. Does it sound familiar? And then with that came the accentuation of every difference: height, weight, sexuality, gender, if your culture had a gender, religion, weight, slave owner, personality, eye color, any little thing, right? And then they would go and they would instigate fights between the groups. The way they got away with that is because how they killed our history, they killed our language. When you don't know your history, you can't create your future because you don't know where you came from, right? And and naturally what you're gonna look towards is the people, your parents, because they know what they're doing, right? They know they're taking care of you. They carry themselves, right, with such confidence. But at the time, the one person that didn't know what they were doing speaks English. Yeah, sure, this person may feed you, clothe you, give you a place to sleep, but this same person is beating you, calling you words, that are unappreciated, right? And not treating you like human. So with that comes a lot of trauma, with that comes a lot of just negativity internalized. And that was all part of the process on how to condition the perfect slave, right? This part gets me the most. And it's part of how, so earlier I mentioned how we were divided by color. That's called breeding. You get certain people with certain attributes, physical attributes, and you divide them, alienate them, isolate them. That's breeding. How can I say this? Before, in UCSC I learned that before the Americas got colonized, the view on homosexuality was different, right? Native Americans, their societies were more matrilineal and matrilocal, so they respected women because they could donate blood without injury, become round, and give life like Mother Earth. Right? And so every time they had, a gay son, an intersex son, a bisexual son or daughter, to them it was like a gift from the gods. To them it was, because in their societies, gender was fluid. If you were female and you liked scalping wolves, killing, hunting, building things, whatever, that's fine, you could do it. If you were male and you like gathering fruits, dancing, singing, telling stories, that's fine, chances are you're always gonna do it. Those who were, gay were respected because they didn't just do one or the other, they did both, right? And so while they were off shooting arrows and doing all these things, they would remember how to crush a fruit a certain way, carry a baby a certain way, or certain memories, right? And boom, that would be the innovation. They were the oracles. They could see the stars and the planets without telescopes. They could predict when it was going to rain, where the water was going to overflow, what land was fertile enough, how to build canals. They were the ones, being the leaders. We were the ones who were the leaders, yeah? And once the Spanish came to colonize, they took our knives, they took our tools, and they put us in a pit where the war dogs, killed everyone who was vulnerable, right? But there's more to this. And Willie Lynch mentions it. He gathered all the women, he gathered all the children, and the two biggest, buffest men. I don't know how many of you have seen The Passion of Christ, but to one of the men they did something similar to what they did with Jesus in the movie, which is to beat him to the Pope, but not kill him. Make him wish he was dead, but don't kill him. And I quote Willie Lynch, make him wish he was dead, but don't kill him. Then, so imagine the women and the children were watching everything, okay? And they couldn't do anything because they had guns pointed at them, right? Then you get the second biggest, buffest male. You get 4 ropes tied to his wrists, tied to his ankles, tied to the butt of 4 horses, and whip them in opposite directions. So he gets quartered in front of the women and the children. So that right there, what happens to the women, it's like, oh, like, that's my cousin, that's my father, that's my grandfather, that's my son. What about my other son or his brothers? Like, my son isn't going to grow up to be like this. No, he's going to be strong, he's going to have a tough body, no horse will pull him apart, right? Take the mind, keep the body, right? And at the same time, she's going to raise the rest of her daughters to be the same, it's really, like, complicated. And the thing is, so what's going to happen is she's going to raise her daughters to be, to take on both roles, male and female, because the image of the male defeated, right, based on what they witnessed. And they're going to, sorry, I'm blanking out. Right, raise their daughters to be the same, vulnerable, overstressed, and all these, and taking on both roles, right? So, and then Willie Lynch laughs at us and says, what you're gonna have is the big, buff, cowardly male hiding and covering himself behind the small, tiny, overstressed female. He laughs. So there's a lot of history of trauma as people of color, and especially queer people of color, and it goes whereas the darker you are and the more effeminate you are and all that. There's something else I'd like to mention, I just can't remember. Okay, adding on to that division, the son and the daughters didn't always, of the slave owner, didn't always come out as light or as white, as the indoor slaves or their son and daughter that came out the way they wanted them to, right? Sometimes the slave owners had sons or daughters that were darker, really, really dark, right? You couldn't even tell physically that they have white blood in them. So they used that to their advantage to add to the division. I remember it was my mom, she was a single mom. It was me and my older brother at the time. And so she would come home from a 12-hour shift, take out her frustration on my brother and myself, and then when she'd leave, my brother would then take out his frustrations on me, so I always got the butt end of everything, right? My little sister came, and for me, like, my biggest thing was to be tall, so I always helped her to, like, reach high elevations and stuff. And like a clumsy kids that we are, she would trip or something would happen. What got me though was the intensity of the discipline, right? Why punish so harshly a boy for being a boy and for so long? Right? Simply for being a boy, I was expected to lie, to cheat, to steal, and it's like, and to be tough. And it was like, no, that's not what I'm about. That's not how I am. I knew something was wrong then and there. I knew something was wrong because I would go to school and I could feel the language barrier. I could feel by me speaking Spanish, I could feel just something was not right. And I was a good person. I am a good person, yet I was getting yelled at for stupid things, right? And I could see that it was more than just that anger. It was like more hidden. What is it? I wanted to find out.